So the first What If video about Steven Universe from a couple weeks ago got a pretty positive response, and more than a few people have been asking for a follow-up already, and let's be honest, I'm still kind of on a Steven Universe kick right now anyway, so hey, why not just skip the formalities and do part 2 of this right away, and pick 5 more Steven Universe characters and give them teams of 4 Pokemon apiece. So make yourself a nice together breakfast and try not to let it get assimilated into the body of a weird smoke monster, as I once again tell you what I think it'd be like if Steven Universe characters were Pokémon trainers. And as always, big time heckin' spoilers ahead! We're gonna start this one off with a member of what a lot of Steven Universe fans commonly refer to as the Crystal Gem B team, and someone who honestly deserved a lot more screen time, Bismuth. Voiced by Uzo Aduba, Bismuth makes her debut in the Season 3 episode, well, Bismuth, having been bubbled inside the pink dimension in Lion's Mane for about 5,300 years. She was originally brought to Earth to build things for Homeworld's elite gems, much like she would do on any other planet that was colonized by them, but after meeting the leader of the rebellious Crystal Gems, Rose Quartz, Bismuth decided to join the cause, outfitting the Crystal Gems with the weapons they used in their uprising, including Rose's famous sword. Perhaps the most loud and proud member of the Crystal Gems, Bismuth isn't shy about her love for her fellow rebels, nor her distaste for the diamonds, and will do whatever it takes to win the war, and show those homeworld upper crust elites that the Crystal Gems mean Bismuth. Let's start Bismuth's Pokemon team with a Scrafty, an outlaw Pokemon that's a great representation of both her aggressive nature and just how much pride she takes in being a Crystal Gem and rebelling against Homeworld, to the point of harboring a deep resentment towards the diamonds. Also, Scrafty's Pokedex entries speak of how it's very loyal to those it cares about, perfect for how Bismuth cares for her fellow Crystal Gems so much, building bonds with those who were still alive and grieving for those who she thought might have been shattered. Next up, let's go with a Skarmory, whose Pokedex entries say that its sharp feathers are often used as swords, which is perfect for someone who took on the role of the Crystal Gems weapons blacksmith during the war, even going out of her way to upgrade the other Crystal Gems weapons in the present. After that, I'm gonna give her an Escavalier, whose knight-like armor makes it a great aesthetic pick due to the knight's armor that Bismuth wears during multiple episodes in the latter half of Season 5. Also, Escavalier's lance-like arms are a perfect representation of Bismuth's would-be ultimate weapon, the Breaking Point, a pile bunker-style weapon that she created to give the Crystal Gems the edge against Homeworld, claiming that it could shatter any gem in the blink of an eye. And I think I just really like it because it reminds me so much of the sudden impact attack from my favorite anime series, The Big O, seeing as how they're pretty mechanically similar. Also, watch The Big O, you cowards! And last but not least, Camerupt, whose Pokedex entries say it has 18,000 degree magma coursing through its body at all times, which could represent the molten lava that Bismuth not only uses to forge weapons, but also that she herself bathes in and uses to relax. Also, all 3 of Camerupt's possible abilities could represent something about Bismuth herself. Magma Armor, her resistance to and tolerance for extreme heat, Solid Rock, her general sturdiness and endurance, and Anger Point, her fury upon learning that Rose Quartz was the one to poof and bubble her in the first place after refusing to use the Breaking Point, and then flat out lied to the other Crystal Gems about what had happened to her. I can't really blame her for being mad about that. I'd be pretty angry too. Hell, I bet she'd be even more pissed off if she knew that she'd be in one episode in Season 3 and then not properly appear again until damn near the end of Season 5. Look, I'm sorry, Crooniverse, but leaving a super interesting character on the bench for almost 2 whole seasons? That's just bad Bismuth.
I don't know. Same joke twice?
Hey, come on, don't dunk on my crappy jokes. I can do that very well enough myself, thank you. Next up, let's talk about Steven's very best friend, and one of his most trusted allies, Connie Maheshwaran. Voiced by Grace Rolek, Connie meets Steven for the first time during her on-screen debut in the Season 1 episode Bubble Buddies, where the two get trapped in Steven's very first defensive bubble that he made on accident, and very nearly drown. So, you know, hell of a foundation for a friendship. Even after this disastrous first meeting, the two continued to hang out, despite concerns from Connie's very strict mom and dad, a doctor and a private security guard respectively, as she was slowly integrated into the Crystal Gem way of life, training in swordsmanship under Pearl so that she could help protect Steven and the Earth at large from any dangerous threat. She's very intelligent and has an eye for details, always trying to prepare in advance for future events, even though she, kinda like Steven, and has a tendency to get distracted by something more interesting in the moment. Level-headed, cool under pressure, and always willing to leap into action and adventure, Connie goes from a shy and kinda sheltered girl to someone that the Crystal Gems not only look to as a trusted ally, but also consider a full-blown member despite not being a gem herself, and someone who will always be there for Steven no matter what, to be the gem to Steven's biscuit. Speaking of that bond with Steven, there's no better Pokemon to start Connie's Pokemon team than Aegislash, for basically the same reason that it's on Steven's team. Sword and Shield Pokemon representing Steven's shield and Connie using Rose's sword, you know the deal. After that, I think I'll give Connie a Minior, given that its two forms, the shelled meteor form and the unshelled core form, could represent how Connie goes from an introvert with a strict, rule-saturated upbringing to someone who comes out of her shell and becomes more confident and outgoing, to the point of even occasionally taking on something of a leadership role in the Crystal Gems when necessary. For the third slot, I think I want to represent Connie's intellect with a Metagross, whose Pokedex entries say that it has the intelligence of a supercomputer, pretty solid for Connie given that she's always been pretty well read and analytical, having a fairly extensive vocabulary, and, in Steven Universe Future, cramming her studies to the point of prepping for college 2 years ahead of time. And to round out Connie's team, I think I want to go with a Decidueye. The mask-like markings on its face have always kind of looked like big round-rimmed glasses to me, which could be a decent aesthetic reference to the glasses that Connie wears for most of the first 2 seasons, up until the episode Nightmare Hospital, due to Steven accidentally healing her eyesight back when he discovered his healing spit. Also, Decidueye being based on fantasy archers, and Robin Hood in particular, could be a nice reference to Connie being a big fan of the 4-book fantasy novel series The Spirit Morph Saga, with her making herself an outfit during the episode Open Book that includes a green cloak that's pretty reminiscent of Decidueye's hood. I just hope for Connie's sake that the Spirit Morph Saga never gets a film adaptation. You just know that they're gonna split those 4 books into 9 movies and then consider them a failure if they don't triple their budgets. Going back to the gem members of the Crystal Gems now, I think it'll be pretty interesting to talk about a character who actually started out as one of their enemies, Peridot. Voiced by Shelby Rabara, the initially cold and calculating Peridot was actually the central antagonist of the show's first season, and most of the second, being assigned to oversee the development of the mysterious entity known as the Cluster, a humongous mass of forcibly fused together gem shards that was set to eventually explode the Earth from the inside out. Much of her early interactions with the Crystal Gems involve them trying to find out what she's planning, and trying, and often failing, to catch her, with her more often than not just barely slipping through their fingers. Once they do finally catch her, of course, Steven tries to befriend her, teaching her about Earth's weather patterns, the power of music, and the endless value of friendship. And despite more than a few bumps in the road, those lessons do eventually pay off, as Peridot not only tells her superior, Yellow Diamond, that she believes the Cluster should be terminated, but even eventually calls her a clod, fully betraying Homeworld and cementing herself as a Crystal Gem in the process. Peridot can be somewhat condescending and oblivious to the other Crystal Gems' feelings, and maybe just a little self-aggrandizing.
Victory is mine! Now I'm the one in charge. Praise me! Praise me!
Okay, she could be very self-aggrandizing, but over time, Peridot learns to love and appreciate herself in a much healthier way, all while growing closer to her fellow Crystal Gems, and truly comes to appreciate the planet Earth, and all of the life that grows on it. Now, given how tech-savvy Peridot really is, I have got to start her Pokemon team with a Rotom, a Pokemon who uses machines and technology as its own physical form, a solid reference for Peridot being very well versed in the advanced technology of the Gem homeworld. Also, Rotom using machines as its physical body is a perfect representation of the limb enhancers that Peridot used for most of her life up until the events of Catch and Release. Speaking of homeworld tech, I think her next Pokemon should be Iron Treads, a Paradox Pokemon whose Pokedex entries, not to mention the September issue of Oculture magazine and Scarlet and Violet, all claim that Iron Treads is some sort of extraterrestrial machine, a great callback for the various Robinoid units that Peridot utilizes through many of her initial appearances, whether to keep tabs on the Cluster or to try and repair various warp pads. Next up, I have got to give Peridot a Pumpkaboo to represent Pumpkin, the dog-like sentient pumpkin creature that acts as her pet sometime after Peridot begins living in Steven's family's old barn after defecting from Homeworld, a delightful little creature who was born from Steven's power of phytokinesis. Also, Pumpkaboo being a grass type could be a decent reference to Peridot's general desire to be a farmer, which actually carries over into her job teaching about farming and plant life at Little Homeworld homeschool during Steven Universe Future. And lastly, Magnezone, a Pokemon based on, and often confused for, a stereotypical alien UFO that can have the ability Analytic, which could reference Peridot's highly intelligent and analytical mind, manifesting in the very strategic ways she'd often outwit the Crystal Gems, despite being outnumbered and physically outmatched. Also, Magnezone being able to emit powerful magnetic fields could reference the metal manipulation powers that she kinda just inexplicably gets at the end of the episode Too Short to Ride. Maybe it's just me, but I kinda thought that whole episode was going for a Peridot didn't need special powers to be special thing, and then she just kinda got special powers at the end anyway, and I don't know, it just kinda felt antithetical to the point of the episode, right? No? Just me? But now I want to talk about someone who's not a Crystal Gem, but has definitely been a great help to the team, especially to one of its key members, Greg Universe. Voiced by Tom Sharpling, Greg Universe is easygoing, friendly, and optimistic, and is the father of the main character, Steven Universe. Greg lives in his van, having left behind his somewhat uptight and strict family, and his original last name DeMeo, to pursue the life of a traveling musician. And while he didn't always make ends meet with that job, what he did meet was the leader of the Crystal Gems, Rose Quartz, at one such concert in Beach City, immediately falling for the mysterious lady from space and pursuing a relationship with her, much to the very obvious chagrin of Pearl. Eventually, the two had a child together, the one and only Steven Universe, but Rose gave up her physical form in the process, her gem now embedded in the body of her son, with Greg being very out of the loop when it comes to how to handle Steven's gem half. In fact, most of the time he opts to stay out of all the magical gem stuff that Steven gets involved with, not wanting to really get in the way. Although that might also partially be because some of the Crystal Gems, again mainly Pearl, still kinda resent Greg for his relationship with Rose, and even Amethyst describes him as being kind of a mess. But when push comes to shove, Greg will do whatever it takes to protect his son and make sure that he has the freedom to be whoever he wants to be, because he may not know much about gem stuff, but he damn sure knows how to be a good dad. Let's start Greg's Pokemon team with a Toxtricity, who has several animations that make it look like it's strumming on an electric guitar, perfect for Greg's passion as a musician, and specifically a guitarist. Also, I went with the low-key form to kind of represent how easygoing and chill Greg is most of the time. Speaking of which, I'm going to go with a Whimsicott next, whose Pokedex entries speak of its nomadic nature, allowing itself to be carried on the wind, a great reference to Greg spending much of his younger life as a traveling musician and, even now, still living in his van. Also, Whimsicott having the ability Prankster goes super well with Greg's sense of humor, always making time to try and get a laugh out of his son. After that, let's go with an Exploud, a Pokemon who both communicates and attacks with various sound waves, which could definitely represent Greg's skill as a sound engineer, being so proficient with it that he was able to use his Earth-based audio equipment to translate a message from a Gemtech Wailing Stone into video format. And lastly, Oranguru, classified in the Pokedex as the Sage Pokemon, a great reference for Greg's tendency to give fatherly advice, not only to his actual son Steven, of course, but also to Connie, and even to the Ruby who makes up half of Garnet during the time that she and Sapphire had split up. Honestly, I wish I had Greg in my life to give me some advice. If nothing else, maybe some advice on how to write a sweet burger chain jingle. I could certainly use one of those fancy $10 million royalty checks. And last, but most certainly not least, another member of the Crystal Gems, one of the most powerful non-diamond gems, and one of my personal favorite characters from the show, Lapis Lazuli. Voiced by Jennifer Paz, Lapis Lazuli is a strong-willed but very troubled character, and God, she's been through the ringer, man! During the Gem Rebellion, she came to Earth, presumably to terraform it like other Lapis Lazuli gems would do for other homeworld-controlled planets, but she got caught up in the crossfire of a battle and got poofed, only to then be mistaken by Homeworld for a crystal gem herself and trapped in a magical mirror, being interrogated for years about the whereabouts of her supposed comrades. And then, of course, in the chaos of Homeworld gems fleeing the planet before the Diamonds unleashed their final attack on the Earth, the mirror was abandoned at the galaxy warp for thousands of years, leaving Lapis trapped and unable to get home, until Steven Universe befriended her and pulled her cracked gem from the mirror's reverse side, freeing Lapis Lazuli in the process, and healing said gem in the next episode to give her back the ability to sprout her water wings. Lapis spends most of her time on the show struggling with the trauma of being trapped on Earth and used by various people, always struggling for some kind of control, given how often it's been taken away from her. But despite her irrational habits habit of running away when faced with the possibility of facing the diamonds, and her sometimes reprehensible decisions, like fusing with Jasper to form the mutually toxic Malachite, in part so that she could protect Steven, but also in part to take out her anger on Jasper, and the way she initially treated Peridot, who, to be fair, did interrogate her for info about the crystal gems and drag her back to Earth after she escaped the first time, Lapis is still a good person at heart and is willing to open up to those who show her genuine kindness, kinda like Steven, and even eventually warms up to Peridot, with the two forming a sweet little odd couple dynamic while living at the barn. Underneath the crushing waves of her pain, trauma, and mistrust is someone who does yearn for real friendship, even if she doesn't feel welcome to or deserving of it, and someone who just wants someplace that she can truly call her home. You know those posts on Twitter and TikTok and stuff you see sometimes where someone goes, "Oh, we need more complex characters in media," and then the second part goes, "You couldn't even handle them?" Lapis Lazuli is exactly the kind of character those posts are made about. She is the complex character that people couldn't handle, man. Anyway, personal bias aside, let's get an obvious pick out of the way and give Lapis Lazuli a Kyogre, a legendary Pokemon said to be able to control the world's ocean at will, perfect to represent Lapis's hydrokinetic abilities, with her being able to control water and make constructs out of it, anything from giant hands to semi-sentient water clones of her enemies. Also, Kyogre being a legendary Pokemon fits pretty well with Lapis kinda casually being one of the most powerful non-diamond gems in the whole show, at one point using the planet's entire ocean to create a massive water tower in a desperate attempt to get back to Homeworld, and later, after dropping the barn on top of Blue Diamond's head, she was the only gem who was able to resist Blue Diamond's power to induce sadness, simply remarking that she's felt worse. And on that same line of thought, I think a great next pick would be Absol, given that its power to predict forthcoming disasters could reference Lapis's tendency to act based on her fear of being attacked by Homeworld, and the diamonds in particular, not wanting to get caught up in the middle of another war after everything the first one put her through. Also, Absol being mistaken as a Doombringer could be a decent little callback for Steven's little joke during Same Old World, where he quips that he only ever seems to see Lapis when something horrible is going on. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and make that Mega Absol, as the wing-like protrusions on its back could reference the water wings that Lapis can sprout from her back to take flight. Not to mention that Mega Absol's ability being Magic Bounce, which reflects the effect of any status move back at the user like a mirror, could be a reference to Lapis's power to project any of her past memories onto a reflective surface to let others view them. And also kind of to the thousands of years that she spent trapped in a mirror, but, you know, maybe let's not dwell on that part too much. After that, let's go with a Gyarados, whose Pokedex entries speak of all the folktales of it destroying entire villages with its power, which could reference how Lapis Lazuli gems were typically employed by Homeworld to terraform the planets they colonized before they could start harvesting its resources. Also, Gyarados being prone to bouts of anger could represent how Lapis has a tendency to succumb to her anger at times, like how she was getting ready to annihilate two other Lapis Lazuli gems during Steven Universe Future, and only stopped herself upon the realization that this ridiculous display of strength would have just been showing weakness from a lack of patience and restraint. And lastly, Smeargle, an artist Pokemon representing the creative hobbies that Lapis took up since permanently moving to Earth, not only enjoying playing music, but also visual art, which she and Peridot refer to as Meat Morp, with Lapis creating one very specifically themed piece.
I just feel trapped. I just feel trapped. Is this one about the thousands of years you spent trapped in a mirror?
No, I just really like that show.
Nice try, Lapis, but as someone who also uses creativity as a coping mechanism who's been around the internet once or twice, I'm pretty sure I know a trauma-fueled vent morp when I see it. But now I want to hear from you. What Pokemon do you think these Steven Universe characters would have on their teams? Let me know in the comments below. Give this video a like if you liked it, subscribe for more videos like this in the future, share this on your favorite social medias, and ring the bell so you'll always be notified when I upload. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video, friendos.